Hello and welcome to Deep Thoughts, Shallow Plots.
My name is Erika, and I really like to watch horror movies.
My name's Katy, and I really like to overanalyze things. What are we overanalyzing today?
Today, we are overanalyzing John Carpenter's cult classic, The Thing, the one from 1982.
Yeah.
The one John Carpenter made.
The one!
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
The Thing, you know?
Not to be confused with The Thing from Another World.
Or The Thing 2011?
Right, which is technically a prequel to The Thing 1982. So, gosh, should one of us,
Okay, yeah, a quickie little recap.
Yeah.
There's a thing from outer space. It can imitate people. It imitates a dog. Oh no, everybody dies.
Or so it would seem.
Yeah. They're all alone on an Antarctic base.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of people there. That's
No.
honestly a very small expedition.
Yeah, we've got a very...
But they have sled dogs. And that's what matters the most.
There are... Oh, that's very interesting. There are 13 people in this
lucky
cast.
number.
Yeah.
Does that count the dog, though?
It does not count the
cast.
dogs.
Okay.
There are several dogs.
Yeah.
Of course, there's the main star dog.
The star
but there
dog.
are many, many dogs.
Yeah.
It's very much like an ensemble production,
yeah,
right?
Kurt Russell feels kind of like as much of a main character as one has in this movie, but it's very much an ensemble piece.
Very much. And I was... Because you... this was your first time watching this movie.
It was.
And you liked it.
I liked it a lot. I understand the thoughts.
Me too, yeah. It's not... I wouldn't say The Thing is my favorite movie, but I can absolutely understand why it is
a favorite movie for
people's
Yeah.
favorite movie. Yeah.
No, it does a really good job at a lot of things.
Yes.
Just as a genre film,
Yes.
the way it builds suspense is really fucking good. It already takes place in this remote location. It's basically another cabin in the woods, except we're not in the woods. We're in the snow.
We're in the Antarctic.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's the first goddamn week of winter.
Yep.
Radios haven't been reaching anybody in 2 weeks.
Yep.
There's a great part when they go to the Norwegian base and they're going through the science lab with the different vials of liquid and finding the research notes. It's such a classic horror suspense mystery of oh, why did this person kill himself? And what's this burned body? And what are these things?
Right. And yeah, we get to see them figure it out, right?
Yeah.
And then it's interesting because I think this movie doesn't do it as much as the 1951 version, but there's just a lot of exposition, they show us something and they're all right, so in case you couldn't put it together, this thing is some sort of organism that is imitating
other things
perfectly, blah, blah, blah,
look at it taking this dog DNA and this human DNA and
are oh, okay, thanks for really spelling it out for us, just in case. But yeah, it's a nice slow build.
Yeah.
There is but it does start really early. There's the general kind of sense of dread and being ill at ease.
Because right off the bat, we have the Norwegian guy coming in shooting.
Yeah, that's
true. And then he dies. So
true.
we get it. We get murder real quick.
That's true.
Well, self-defense. They think,
yeah, because they can't speak Norwegian.
They can't speak. If they did, then they would know the whole movie.
Yeah. That's also an interesting thing to me is that the whole point is that this is a U.S. military base effectively.
Yeah.
Or a research base.
It's some sort of research base.
That
that
seems
definitely
to
has some sort of military or some sort of command.
Yeah.
I think the idea for McCready, Kurt Russell's character, is that he's supposed to be a vet.
He's a helicopter pilot. Yeah.
So from the Vietnam War.
Probably. Yeah. And then, but we've got mechanics, we've got physicians, we've got other kinds of scientists here.
Yeah. Unclear exactly what they're researching, but
they're just there to research.
They've got biologists, they've got physicists, they've got astronomers.
And
which is probably what you just do in the Antarctica.
It seems similarly what was happening with the Norwegians.
Yeah.
Right.
They just had a general base.
And it just seems interesting that maybe this is just the fact that it's just a film or it's the 1982 of it all. But don't you think that there would be more international cooperation with learning more about Antarctica?
In the 1982 of it all? I don't know. Is that...
Probably not. Don't you think that, there would be some way to communicate between, the American base and the Norwegian base? And don't you think there'd be some way...
Don't you think they would have... Yeah.
They'd have some translator.
If they were close enough for that dog to run all the way from the Norwegian base, that quote-unquote dog...
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, that seems like a far distance for a dog to go without getting shot by these people in their helicopters.
Because it's not
and then they're able to go over there in their helicopters and I don't even know.
They figured it out. Yeah.
So, like, they're nearby. They have to know of each other.
Yeah.
They don't have any translators.
Right. Come on.
Where was Windows? I feel like that should have been Windows' job.
That could have been part of Windows' job for sure. Yeah.
But I don't remember if he was there during that part.
Well, I don't think Windows ever leaves
He just
the
does not.
station.
He's an indoor kid.
He's very much an indoor kid because he's the radio operator.
Yeah.
So he needs to stay near the radio.
Yeah, in case they get any.
Even though they're not.
Even though it's been 2 weeks since they've heard it from anyone.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like, I mean, the thing that. See what
The
I did there?
thing?
The thing about the thing
This is going to be a problem.
Oh, no. Yeah, it's been said a gazillion times. Like, the iconic thing about this film is, like, the use of, like, entirely practical effects.
Yeah. Fucking gory, gross practical effects.
Yeah, really, really great stuff. And I really actually just had one note in my good horror shit notes that I take every time.
Yeah.
What just really stood out to me, and it's a little early on, but what I really love is when they go to the Norwegian base, right? And they see it's all broken down, it's blown up, it's frozen over, all that stuff.
All that foreshadowing.
And they see the little do they know that they're looking in a mirror of what they're about to become.
Yeah.
They see that, like, anonymous Norwegian who seems to have died by suicide, right? And, like,
so good.
the blood is dripping from, like, his wrists, and it's, like, frozen mid-drip. And I was like, that's so fucking metal! Yes! I mean, like, I don't really think either of us have anything to add about the, like,
practical effects that
the revolutionary use of practical effects that hasn't already been said. They're really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it is interesting the, like, initial response to this film because it's such a cult classic now, but initially people were not fans. And I do think the effects was part of that. A lot of people were just sort of like, that's icky. That's gross.
Yeah, but I actually didn't know this until I was doing some research. I did not know that this film was not successful.
No.
When it first was released. And
like John Carpenter was like super down about it.
Yeah, poor John Carpenter, poor guy. Yeah. And he was just like, buddy. I mean, I was like, but then I was like, John Carpenter, like, you have so many other things to your name. And, like, thank goodness that this ended up becoming a cult classic. But, like, yeah, it didn't do very well. I learned that it was released on the exact same day as Blade Runner, which was probably not smart.
Yeah.
Box office moves.
Though I don't think Blade Runner was super popular initially. Really? I think it took a little bit of, I think it was a slow burn too.
A slow burn, okay.
But,
and then what about...
and it was E.T. right after E.T.
Yeah, like
I think that was the big one.
Yeah, 2 weeks
People
after
were like,
E.T.
we love friendly, cute aliens.
Yeah.
And then they're like, what about creepy, shape-changing aliens that kill us all?
Yeah.
What about those? And everyone's like,
how about an alien film with undertones of nihilism? And
yeah,
they're like, no, we don't want
the recession? I don't know.
Yeah.
This is the 80s.
It's
Come
the
on.
80s, which is that's so interesting to me that, like, it actually didn't do well. And, you know, this movie and, like, countless others, like, I went to go see The Princess Bride, right?
Oh, yeah.
And Carrie Elwes came out and talked a little bit, and he was talking about how The Princess Bride, same with The Princess Bride, was not successful when it came out. And it really is, like, this, it would be a really interesting thing to, like, learn more about is, like, the impact of VHS and like a home VCR.
Yeah.
And like and then like being able to rent movies, right? And like watch VHSs again of films that you hadn't seen in a really long time.
Yeah.
And like being able to give them that second life, like, which was true for so many
Yeah,
movies.
and it's true for The Thing.
And it's very true for The Thing, and I love that, right? But yeah, it was like considered. Well, it's interesting because I was looking at some of the like the critiques of it when it first came out, and there's it was interesting. There was like a couple critics who mentioned that like the characters. I don't know, they didn't care about the characters.
Yeah, that they found them kind of flat.
And I'm just like, are you paying attention though? Because like these characters are rich.
I don't know. I kind of understand that one.
Okay.
I mean, compared to other horror movies,
sure,
these characters have some stuff going on.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think it kind of comes down to their relationships to each other. Like, we don't care about their relationships with each other because none of them seem to actually really like each other that much.
Right.
Which we'll talk about more when we get to the, like, paranoia and stuff. But I think maybe that's part of where it's coming from.
Yeah.
And honestly, possibly part of the lack of, like, having a woman character.
Oh my God, there are no women in
You know, we're used to having horror films and, like, sci-fi
That's
films.
true.
Alien.
There's no final girl.
Yeah, like, didn't Alien just come out, too, right before The Thing?
Alien came out in 79.
So, like, a little bit before. So we're like, oh, cool, another sci-fi alien slasher, but where's our final girl? You know, our badass lady.
No
or
women
our
at all.
lady who will have the, you know, honestly kind of unnecessary sex scene or the romance, you know, like something to like get us in there.
Which is what happens in the original, and I can't wait to tell you about it.
Okay, yeah, I'm excited for that.
But it's just so interesting that a critique of like not caring about the characters, because like this movie really only works like with the characters. Like I literally took notes for this film by character.
Yeah. See, this is one of the first films where I didn't have specific character notes. I don't know, because I think it was such an ensemble for me.
Yeah.
They work like together as a unit, but like as individuals, when I break them down, I get them all kind of confused.
Exactly, which is why I was taking notes, because like who's in charge of what?
Yeah, and I think that's what they mean about the characters being kind of like they're kind of interchangeable.
I suppose, yeah. But I think, like, again, you know, I could totally see why this movie would be somebody's favorite movie.
Yeah.
I think really because of its, like, rewatchability. Like, all of, like, the subtleties and, like, catching things.
Yeah, it takes you a while to be like, oh, wait, that guy is already the thing.
Yeah.
And then that guy is not a thing, but they all think he's a thing.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's part of it. And I think it's part of, like, The Princess Bride. I think The Thing was one of the first films, was sort of, like, on the edge of, like, a new thing. God, we're going to keep using the word thing because it's in our head now, and each time it's going to be weird.
Yep.
But, you know, like the first film that does something different,
right?
The audience reaction can be very like, no.
Yeah.
And then a bunch of other creators of films see it and are like, actually, yes, and like expand upon it. Like, I think The Thing probably inspired a lot of people.
Definitely. And like, you know, a little bit of being like before its time. Like, it was, or ahead of its time, if you will. Like, it wasn't really, like American film going audiences in the early 80s were like not interested in this kind of storytelling.
Yeah. And I think they weren't interested in the body horror of it. A lot of the reviews were just like, this was gross. Mm-hmm. This was unnecessarily gross.
It is gross. Unnecessarily gross, I beg to differ.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so body horror has been something that we've been talking about a little bit. And
it's something that I've struggled with. Yeah. No, just because I feel like people throw it around a lot. And I was like, but what does it actually mean, though? Because I feel like sometimes people use it interchangeably with, like, gore.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that doesn't feel
accurate.
Yeah, gore is its own thing.
Yeah.
So I did take some time to be like, okay, where does body horror come from?
What is this? What did you learn?
Well, it was first coined, or at least first in writing, by Philip Brophy in his 1983 article, Horrality, the Textuality of the Contemporary Horror Film. And he's like just describing a recent trend in cinema, which would have come after The Thing, 1983. So very much right after The Thing, where he's noticing this trend, though of course body horror has existed for much longer, because like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein is an example of body horror. Literally a body being like stitched together.
Yep.
But no, what I was really looking for was like what distinguishes it, and what I can see body horror, while it can be violent and gory, it's sort of distinguished from like the slasher genre or like other bloody genres because it focuses on like a lack of control of the body.
Right.
Like, it's the difference between someone's arm being cut off, right, which is just sort of gore. If you see someone's arm cut off, you know, that's just violence, versus someone's arm, like, suddenly developing a mind of its own, or, like, rotting with an incurable disease, or transforming into a bestial claw. Like, there's some sort of element of, like, the body going beyond your control. Specifically, Brophy writes, the contemporary horror film tends to play not so much on the broad fear of death, but more precisely on the fear of one's own body, of how one controls and relates to it. And he also specifically mentions The Thing when he writes, the essential horror of The Thing was in The Thing's total disregard for and ignorance of the human body. To it, the human body is merely protein, no more. So it's this idea of like the body being used in ways that are like beyond what your control, your own body being used in ways beyond your own control.
Yeah.
That can be violent, but it's more than just violence.
Right. To me, the way I always thought about it was like gore, like, okay, if we've got like a Venn diagram here, right? Gore and body horror have an overlap.
Yeah.
Right. But like gore can just be like blood and guts for the sake of blood and guts.
Yeah.
Which I'm not against, by the way. Famously, the bloodier...
Yeah, you love that shit.
I love it. Yeah.
I'm neutral on it.
Yeah. So, but when we're like body horror, I feel like it's a little bit more, there's like a deeper psychological element to it, right? Like, thinking about like our mirror neurons, right? We see somebody in a movie, something happen to their body, and like we can't help but
feel it.
Yeah, like mirror it in ourselves, and then think about like, oh, what if that happened to me? Like that would be scary.
Yeah.
Right?
No, there was in the Weird Fiction Review, there's this guy Matthew Pridham who
is that what it's called?
Yeah, it's
the
just
Weird Fiction Review?
Yeah, it's just a journal.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah, an online journal.
I thought it was a fiction review and you were calling it weird.
It was weird.
Okay. What was weird about it?
It's just, they just review weird stuff.
Oh, okay. Okay,
yeah, like sci-fi and horror and things like that. And Matthew Pridham, like, he also talks about how
Maybe
body horror
would be a better word.
Hey man, let them
Whatever.
be weird.
Let them
be weird. That part of what makes body horror terrifying is that he says, we are confronted by a region almost as alien to us as that of another's mind, our own insides. While many horror movies, particularly Saw, Hostel, and the films of the new French extremity, delve into images of the tortured and dismembered body, The Thing animates the resulting carcass. Every secret thing is not only revealed, it makes a grab for your throat. These revelation scenes, paired with the quieter paranoia surrounding them, make The Thing move dizzyingly between the unreadable exterior and the unspeakable interior. So it's like this kind of idea of like, there's like more to, you're seeing more of the body than you feel comfortable seeing.
Yeah.
Like it is almost one thing to see like, I don't know, a head get cut off. That's gory and that might gross you out or something and be like, oh, I'd hate that. But then you see a head cut off and then it sprouts fucking insect
Spider
limbs
legs,
and starts walking around upside down. It's like,
a lot, yeah.
That's like, and you're just seeing more of the body, like bodies open up and like the little tongue reaches out as like a tendril and like starts moving around. It's like, it's more than you want to see.
And there are things coming out of the body that are colors that shouldn't be coming out of a body, right? Which I also think is usually a way to like get around censors.
Right. That was the big deal with the we talked about that with Evil Dead.
Yep.
Yeah, which is another one that was brought up in Horrorality.
Sure, totally. Yeah, so I feel like to me, body horror is like gore, but like a little bit more elevated.
Yeah. A little more, like you said, kind of psychological.
Yeah.
It has a little bit more of that element. Because, people toss it around and they're talking about how, like, I don't know, any violent thing is like body horror. And I'm like, I don't know if that's true.
Can I tell you a story? And we can totally cut this out if you want. Because when I teach sex ed, when we get into STIs.
Talk about body horror.
Exactly.
Disease is a part of body horror. Because that's a loss of control of your body.
And so my favorite... what I tell my students, my favorite STI, and I mean that genuinely, is syphilis. Mm-hmm. And syphilis is very easily treatable, especially if it's caught early. But the thing about syphilis is that if it is not caught, it can cause severe damage to the body. Mm-hmm. And it can eat away at the cartilage in our nose and like have our nose like effectively collapse.
What the fuck?
Yeah, it's pretty gross. And I had a student one year who I had them like do... I don't know, I had made him do something about STIs. And in her like little reflection, she was like, I can see why syphilis is Miss Peterson's favorite STI. And then like she goes a little bit and like she talks about body horror. You know? And I was just like, basically. It's effectively
that one is that one is it.
Yep, that's it. Anywho, do you want to talk about the dog?
I do just really quick want to just give the dog his flowers.
What's the dog's name?
Jed.
He's
a very good
shout out to Jed.
He's such a good actor.
You
like
were
for
saying
a dog,
this.
It struck me, and other people on the internet have said this too. I found out when I went looking more for him because it's such a thing that you can always see. I love dog actors because no matter what they're doing, like you always see dogs that are like supposed to be guard dogs and they're like bark bark. I'm so big, it's scary.
Yeah,
but their little tail is just like waggy 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 because they're like, I'm being a good dog. I'm acting. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. Yay! Yeah. And they're like all just so happy to be there and be working, and they're like, I'm gonna get treats after this. Yay! But this dog, like, never accidentally looks at the camera, never looks off like he's looking at whoever's his handler is or who's going to give him a treat or whatever. His tail never fucking wags.
His tail never wags, yeah.
Like, and the way he moves is, like, kind of careful and weird, like when he's creeping around the hallways.
Yeah, it was almost kind of giving me cat.
Yeah,
like the way
it's
that,
like
a big cat.
Prowl.
Yeah,
he is prowling.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. He just like did not betray shit.
Yeah.
He was in character.
Yeah.
Apparently, in that hallway scene, they only needed to do like 5 takes or something to get everything they needed because this dog Jed was a fucking professional.
God damn it.
He was
Jed.
Yeah, he was a wolf dog.
Of course.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah.
And he is the dog that starred in White Fang, which I have not seen, but apparently he's incredible in White Fang as well.
I don't know what that is.
It's the one. It's like a Jack London story, but it's
okay.
It's a wolf that gets like tamed.
No.
Yeah.
And Jed's the wolf?
And Jed's the wolf.
Jed!
And he apparently does an amazing job, so maybe. Yeah, he's part wolf. He lived to be almost 20 years old. He was like 18. Yeah. And The Thing was his first movie role.
For a big dog like that?
Yeah.
Holy wow.
This was his first movie role, too, and he fucking smashed it.
Jed, unsung hero of canine acting.
Yeah. I'm obsessed with Jed now. I'm going to watch White Fang. I never wanted to before, but now I do.
Yeah.
Because Jed's my new favorite actor.
Yep.
And I love him. Yeah. Yes, the dog dies, but first he steals the show.
He steals the show. Yeah. We do get, like we were talking about in the Hallow last month's episode, we did get that, like, the dog does die.
The dog does die.
Every dog dies. There are many dogs.
I know. I thought maybe a bunch of the dogs run away at first. I'm like, maybe they'll just run into the wilderness and join a wolf pack. And then, no, Blair comes back with a fucking axe and just fucking kills them.
Yeah.
I would kill Blair right then.
I'm excited to talk about that, though.
Okay, yeah. But everything Blair does is
first,
fascinating.
do we want to, like, set the scene here?
For...
With, like, the historical context of this, what am I calling it? IP, I guess.
Yeah, it is IP. Yeah.
So
this is mythos. This is a canon.
This canon, yeah. So it's early on, but we're gonna start with an early literary corner, right?
Yeah, we're gonna get into it
because this is the story is based off of is it a short sci-fi story?
Yes, a novella. Well, I'll get into it.
Okay. Called Who Goes There?
Knock, knock, knock.
Literary corner.
Yeah. It's a novella that would be adapted as a thing. It actually started as a draft called Frozen Hell, and then it was like kind of streamlined more and eventually published in 1938 under the title Who Goes There. Mm-hmm. It was written by John W. Campbell Jr. Are you familiar with him?
No, I'm not familiar with writers. Certainly not in comparison to you.
Well, to be fair, I wasn't super familiar with him either. I was not at all familiar with him.
Okay.
Because
I'm not
sci-fi's not really my genre.
Sure.
And
yeah.
even if it was American literature, it's not really my thing.
No, it's not.
So, but he is like...
He's American?
Yes.
Okay.
And he is considered one of the most influential figures of the golden age of science fiction.
Oh, okay.
Which is a sort of debatable age, whenever you try to like typify or say like this art movement was this time or whatever, it's like a little debatable.
Yeah.
But people tend to agree that the golden age of sci-fi started in 1938 when Campbell took over as the editor of the really popular genre magazine called Astounding Science Fiction.
Ooh.
Because he was there as an editor, like running this magazine. He worked with Isaac Asimov and like all the others, Robert A. Heinlein, like all of them. Do you know Robert A. Heinlein?
I do know that one.
Yeah.
Ray Bradbury?
Yeah, he was probably in there. I don't
Somewhere
know.
in there. Yeah.
I don't fucking know. I don't know. I don't know sci-fi. He did work with L. Ron Hubbard.
Of course, yes. Oh my God.
He was a big sci-fi writer at that time. He was a part of that.
He also wrote a lot of westerns as well.
Oh, I didn't know that part.
Yeah.
But, yeah, and once he took over as an editor, Campbell kind of stopped writing. But the last piece he published was...
Who Goes There?
Who Goes There?
Ooh.
In his own magazine. Because it was already in the process of being published by them, and then he became the main editor, and he was like, we'll just keep publishing my work. Yeah. But yeah, no, it sounds like he really bounced ideas around with a lot of the other main writers of the time. So he is like a big deal in sci-fi. And like just from reading his writing, you can tell that he has a good grasp of like what makes a story work and like the structure of a short story and like just sort of like where to start a story and things like that. Like, I don't know. I think he is an interesting, even though sci-fi is not my thing, and there are definitely parts of his stories where I was like, okay, this is a lot of like sci-fi jargon. I do think he was pretty talented and he has good ideas. But actually, technically, Campbell first wrote about the idea of these like organisms that could adapt their form to like imitate people in a short story called Brain Stealers of Mars.
Okay.
From 1936.
It's always Mars, isn't it? Yeah.
Because, it's like there.
It's close.
It's like right there.
Although I think Venus is closer.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And I don't know. I think Mars just seems sort of like the red. There's like an aesthetic appeal to it.
Yeah.
And it's like far enough away to be interesting, but also like close enough to be like tangible in
possibly
the future.
Threatening, yeah. It's also, like named after Mars, the god of war,
which is way more appealing, I imagine, than Venus. Like, what kind of aliens are going to meet on Venus? Sexy ones, but not like violent, scary ones.
Yeah, boring.
Yeah. But his Brain Cells of Mars is definitely... He was kind of writing it in the style of like another author because that was like what the journal he published in was looking for. So it's really like kind of humorous and light, which is funny. And it's all on Mars. But it has the same body horror stuff where the destroyed things kind of like melt into odd, distorted humans with all those drooping faces and elongated arms. Like that stuff is there from the beginning. And it still has that paranoia where these humans have to like determine who are the real humans and who are the things. But it is like, it's like these two guys and like 8 duplicates of each of them.
Oh.
Yeah, it's weird. It's different.
Okay.
And they figure out which one's the real one because he sneezes, and the other guy's like, well, there's no way an alien could replicate a sneeze. There's just too many muscles involved. If like an alien had never seen a sneeze before, like come on.
Okay.
But anyway, I do think the editing process is kind of interesting and how the story changed from Brain Stealers of Mars to the Frozen Hell novella, which didn't get published, to Who Goes There. Like when he wrote Frozen Hell, he chose an outpost in Antarctica because placing it anywhere with like a dense population would have been too complicated and too quote unquote impersonal. There just would have been too many people and it would have just fucking done it, you know? Like there's no suspense or horror. Like part of the fear needs to come with whether or not they can contain this problem. Right. And if it's already out there, then it's like, well, that's not scary.
Yeah.
One of the scary parts actually in the short story is that near the end, they kind of think they have it contained, but they see an albatross flying by. One of the first albatrosses of the season, and they're like, is that infected or not? We don't know.
Aren't albatrosses... are they a death omen, or are they like a symbol of hope?
Well, it's the albatross around your neck from the Rime of Ancient Mariner, which is, a death symbol.
A death symbol. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think it was supposed to be like to the people at sea, the albatross was supposed to be a sign of like luck or whatever, but he kills the albatross, so it becomes this like burden he has to wear around his neck.
Isn't it like something that indicates that maybe you're close to land or
that? And I think it's like the first bird of spring or something.
Okay, yeah,
it's one of those things.
Okay, sure.
But another interesting thing, what you were talking about with the reviews, early reviews,
yes.
The reason why Argosy, the first magazine he submitted it to, rejected Frozen Hell, one of the big reasons is because the editor was like, these characters don't have any substance. And he was specifically like, why don't you add a woman?
What if you added a woman?
And Campbell was just sort of like, how?
Why? Just to have like a love interest?
Just to have a character who was distinctive, because all the other characters were just not distinctive.
Dudes. Yeah.
Like, they just didn't have personalities. And so it's like, at least a woman would have the personality of being a woman.
Of being a woman and being
But
different from
Campbell
the
was
others.
literally like, how would that be possible at an outpost in Antarctica? That just wouldn't be possible.
Tell me about it, yeah.
I mean, certainly not in the 30s, late 30s.
Fuck no, yeah.
Yeah. But otherwise, Frozen Hell he didn't change too much when he finally published it as Who Goes There. It just has these 3 beginning chapters that it didn't need, and they got cut. That's like basically the big difference.
I see.
Which gives it kind of more of like an action-adventure feeling, because it's like, ooh, it starts with them finding the spaceship. Like, there are no Norwegians. They just, like, find the spaceship themselves and dig it out and, like, what is going on? You know, and then the horror starts. Whereas the version finally published kind of starts with them doing the autopsy. McCready is still the main character as much as there is one.
As much as there is one.
Though it's MC instead of MAC, which matters to people.
It does matter.
Also, he's a meteorologist.
Not a helicopter pilot.
There is a helicopter pilot named Van Wall who's not in the movie, so I guess the characters kind of got combined.
Sure.
But no, and McCready, he's a meteorologist who almost was a doctor, so I feel like that's part of why he kind of ends up in the leadership role, is because after they begin to suspect that Dr. Copper is a thing, they need somebody else to do the blood tests, and McCready's like, well, I know how to do one, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was almost a doctor.
Yeah. But other than that, the plot's like basically the movie. The science is just a little bit clearer. And there's a lot more like philosophical pondering about what it means to be the thing. And like, would we know if we were the thing?
Right.
And what is the thing trying to accomplish?
Right.
Why is it doing that? Which is something I wondered while watching the movie. I was like, what is the thing?
What is its game plan?
What is it trying to... Like, is it just trying to survive? Is it trying to plan some sort of conquest of the world? Does it even think? Or is it just sort of like a parasite just trying, just like adapting and surviving? Because that's what mindless organisms kind of do. Like a virus or something. I don't know. But the other big thing, and I'm curious if this comes up in the original in the 50s movie. The thing has psychic capabilities.
Oh.
Okay. It can read minds. That's part of why it's such a good mimic. Is because it can read minds.
Oh, okay.
It's not just that it's such a good imitation that it gets all of them, like, memories or whatever, which I guess is maybe how it works in the movie. it like literally is reading their minds and influences their dreams. It like sends them dreams about like, I'm gonna take over the world.
Oh, wow.
What up? Yeah. And this is specifically because Campbell was kind of into this Dr. J.B. Rhine, who was like a parapsychologist researcher who was basically ESP, extrasensory perception shit, in the late 30s. And at one point in the story, they even have Dr. Copper say something like, you know, we have to believe that this thing has psychic capabilities because even Dr. Ryan has proven that some people are more sensitive than others. Like, it's just fact. Like, he just says it like, yeah, of course ESP exists.
It's just scientific fact.
Which is like not, you know, I'm not surprised that got cut out for the movies because it's like,
yeah. But that's an interesting little theme from the book, and then, you know, I'll talk about the 1951 movie here, and then the 1982 movie is like the role of science and scientific discovery.
I know, and that's really played up. I mean, in the original short story, The Brain Stealers from Mars, the reason why these two guys are on Mars is because they were involved in like banned atomic research, and they accidentally like. Or they or some other scientists accidentally blew up an entire city with like their atomic research.
So they had to like
to Mars. So yeah, if they wanted to they like wanted to continue their research, so they like ran away. So it's like it has this like what is the responsibility of science and like when does science go too far?
Yeah.
Though I do think the movie has, because it's so nihilistic. The short story, the novella rather, does have a little bit of a happier ending because like first off, it starts off with like 30 something people. Which makes sense, actually, at a base doing research. That makes sense that there'd be more than 13. And at the end, like, at least half of them, maybe more, are still alive. And, yeah, less than half of them die. And they stop the thing. It does end with them catching the Blair version of the thing, making whatever it is that he's making, which in the book is an atomic-powered anti-gravity jetpack device thing.
Okay.
That he's, you know, going to use to get to the rest of the world or to escape. It's unclear. But anyway, the day is saved. So
thank God.
But like, I don't know, the paranoia and the suspense is still really good. And if it had less of the campy sci-fi stuff weighing it down, it'd be like, I would like it, you know. And I do just want to take one quote from it just to give you a sense of where he was coming from with his story, because I think this is kind of like, you know how sci-fi at its core kind of uses aliens to say something about humans?
Yes.
You know, and I think this is kind of what Campbell was getting at with this line. And we humans have what your otherworld race, evidently doesn't. Not an imitated, but a bred in the bone instinct. A driving, unquenchable fire that's genuine. Will fight with a ferocity you may attempt to imitate, but you'll never equal. That's what Max says.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's a lot more like, woo, ha-ha, rah, humans.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
And it's also interesting that this original story is from the late 30s.
Yeah.
So like if we're putting that in a historical context, we're like still in World War II, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting. Literally earlier today I watched the full title is The Thing from Another World from 1951. And so just a couple, they are pretty different films. First of all, it takes place at the North Pole, not the South Pole.
Entirely different. Crazy decision.
There are two women in this film. There's a woman whose name is Nikki. She's the main doctor's assistant.
Makes sense.
It seems like her job is mostly typing up notes for the doctor and flirting with the main protagonist.
Yep.
Captain Patrick Hendry.
Classic.
And then there's Mrs. Chapman. She's just the wife of another doctor at the outpost.
She's just a wife.
She's just a doctor's
wife. A wife and a secretary.
Yeah. Yeah, those are the women. Oh, and Mrs. Chapman has no lines.
Oh, yeah. But, you know, they figured out a way to get a woman to
women,
an outpost,
yeah. So how
Campbell said it couldn't be done.
How this one works is they find... Yeah, there's no Norwegian part of it. They notice on... like their little radar that something has like crashed in the ice not far away. And
okay,
they go
so
find
it starts with a crash too, because the 80s movie starts with us seeing
That's
the crash.
True, we see the crash.
But I'm not sure, because in the short story, in the novella, the thing crashed like thousands of years ago, probably.
Yes, yeah.
So
this was supposed to happen just then.
Yeah.
And so they find an unidentified ship in the ice, but it's like buried in the ice. And so they're trying to melt the ice around the ship.
Mm-hmm. Do they accidentally explode a bunch of shit? Because that happens in the story.
Yes, they actually end up like destroying the ship.
Yeah, that's what happens. Yeah.
But
they recover a body.
Yes, they find what they call a man from Mars.
Oh, yeah.
They cut the body out of the ice, like bring like a big ass block of ice, right?
Yeah.
Back to the outpost. Yeah, so it's really interesting though because he's called Pat in the film, but Captain Patrick Hendry, who's like the protagonist here, him and Nikki, the one non-married woman in this movie, have like they totally have a thing. Like they're established as having had some sort of romantic connection previously, and then they do a thing where they're joking and flirting with each other. And, like, Nikki makes a joke about, like, tying Pat up.
Oh.
And Pat's like, I'll get the rope. And then in the very next scene, Pat is, like, sitting in a chair with his hands tied up in rope.
Whoa.
And Nikki is, like, just feeding him alcohol. Just like, drink this, like, that kind of thing. And then we see just a couple minutes later that Pat undoes the rope himself. So, like, he was probably never actually tied up, you know? Yeah. But, like, that's, like, exceptionally kinky for 1951.
Well, I mean, it's the kinkiness of which one is it who gets taken in the 80s movie in the like storeroom or whatever when he's left alone with the corpse before they know exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
And they come back. I think Windows goes back and sees him all wrapped up in the weird tendrils.
Yep.
That one.
Yep.
I feel like that was also kind of kinky.
Yeah. So the Thing in this film is just one guy.
Just a guy.
He's the one guy in the ice who is like taller, and also seems to be, they keep calling him vegetable.
Okay, that's a thing that comes up because one of the original ideas that Campbell had, like the reason he got interested in it was this idea that like if we found something from another planet, how would we even know if it was plant or animal?
Yes.
Because it's an alien thing. Like what would be the difference there? And like what if you had a thing that could change from plant to animal? And so the things in the Brain Stealers from Mars are very vegetable based.
Yeah.
They're like trees and shit.
So they're plant, it's a plant-based life form that seems to be nourished by blood.
Nice, good, delicious.
And so what happens is the Thing. So there are dogs. There's a little pack of sled dogs.
Yeah.
And the Thing is attacked by the dogs as it tries to escape because it's in the ice. And then someone who's in charge of watching it is kind of getting creeped out by the Thing, so puts a blanket on it, an electric blanket that he doesn't realize is turned on,
so
and it melts the ice, and the Thing comes back and tries to escape.
Yeah.
While the Thing
fully in the novella,
Yeah.
they leave the Thing to defrost in one of the guys' bedroom just with him,
Oh,
and
I
he's
love
like, "I hate this.
Yeah.
This is terrifying and gross."
gross. No.
But it's like he was the astronomer, so he was going to be up all night anyway, so it made sense for him to watch it.
Okay.
And of course, he gets taken and turned into a thing, but you know.
Yeah. So the Thing is attacked by the dog pack, and the Thing ends up killing a couple of the dogs, but the dogs end up getting one of its arms. And so they have the arm to study, and they find that there are like basically like seeds in the arm.
That's different.
And that it's got like, yes, it's very like plant like thorny kind of thing happening, right? And so they're basically looking for the Thing, and the Thing pops up every once in a while, but it doesn't take over, it doesn't imitate, it doesn't take anyone over.
It's a very different
it really only gets like a couple people. Like, it's very, very different situation.
Yeah. None of that paranoia.
No, not really a lot of paranoia.
Or like distrust of each other.
No, not really.
Yeah.
So, and of course it's like 1951. So can I just tell you about a couple of the 1951 things of it all? So it takes place in the North Pole, right? And so they're supposed to, apparently there are some like Inuit people helping out at the outpost, and they make reference to the quote-unquote Eskimos working for them, that like once the Thing came in and the block of ice, the, again, quote-unquote Eskimos just like turn tail and they're fucking out of there.
Smart. Yeah.
And
I mean, that is another aspect of the Thing that I don't know if we'll get into, but just the xenophobia of it all, with any alien story.
Yeah. Oh, and then when they're like ready, like they know, like kind of towards the end of the film, kind of the beginning of the third act, they're like, okay, this is what we're up against. Like, we need to go kill it. One of the characters makes a comment because they've got like axes and, all this shit. One character makes a comment and he says, "It looks like a lynching party." And I was like, woof.
Oh,
woof.
I do wonder about like a racial politics reading of the 80s version of the Thing, which I'm not qualified to do, but just because the two black characters that we have seem stereotypical in certain ways.
Yes.
I think they had a hard time casting Knowles. Is that the one who's the kitchen?
Yeah.
Because like the first person they had read for it, he was like, "This is fucking stereotypical like bullshit.
Yeah, he doesn't. Yeah, that character really doesn't get like Nal's just like disappears at the end.
We don't see. I guess there was supposed to be a death scene and they cut it.
Oh, okay. God, poor Nal's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But even Childs is sort of like, okay, this big kind of aggressive black guy who's like the main antagonist, kind of like the main for our McCready, our white guy hero. It's like weird. There's weird stuff happening there.
Let's save it.
Okay, you want to talk about
that? So I
want
to tell you about Dr. Carrington, who is one of the characters. So there are a lot of characters in this film, but really like the two that matter are Captain Patrick Henry, the like main protagonist guy, and then there's Dr. Arthur Carrington, who's Nikki, the one girl with lines in this film, is his secretary.
So is our main guy like a meteorologist?
So they
is
are.
Is he at all like McCready?
This is specifically a military base.
Oh, okay.
They are representing the U.S. military.
Okay.
There is also a guy who is Ned Scott, who's a journalist.
Oh, interesting.
And so
that's a good angle.
It's a very good angle. So the movie actually starts in Anchorage, which is interesting because this is 1951, and it is worth noting that Alaska was not a U.S. state yet.
Oh,
worth noting. So he's in an officers club, basically looking for the next story, you know? And there's another person, a flight navigator, Ken McPherson, a.k.a. Mac, M-A-C, for what it's worth.
Yeah.
And so they get word that there's a General Fogarty who's ordering them to go to the North Pole.
Oh, okay.
As per the request of the lead scientists, one of which is Dr. Arthur Carrington.
Yeah.
And so Ned Scott's like, I'm looking for a story. Let me come with you, you know? But so there's the journalist, and at the outpost is a bunch of doctors. But then like kind of our main characters, there are like some like servicemen, basically. Yeah. So it's much more militaristic in that way. So yeah, they've got this kind of faceless General Fogarty who's giving them orders. This movie is in a way opposite of the 1982 version in that they do not ever stop getting communication from their higher ups.
Oh, you know what's interesting in the story?
Yeah.
The way Campbell writes it, they still can send out radio messages.
Yes.
So they keep sending out radio messages as if nothing bad is happening.
Oh.
Because they don't want a rescue team to come. Because if a rescue team comes, that's more people for this thing to infect and imitate. So they just keep being like,
all's good.
The stars are sure turning in the sky.
Yep, those are stars, all right.
And
those are stars.
Yeah.
So they don't ever stop getting communication.
Yeah.
And of course the communication is telling them like, hey, whatever you find, like keep it safe. You know, we need it. But then of course the men who are actually there are just like, no, we must destroy it, blah, 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 blah. But so this is where Dr. Carrington comes in. He is like he is taking like the hard scientific line. He goes on a couple tangents about like the purpose of humans being alive is like discovery, like scientific discovery and like learning more about like the universe. And so he doesn't want to kill the thing. He wants to learn about it. And he even
responsibility of scientists.
Yeah.
Right?
And
what
he's
is it?
even like, even if we don't survive this, like we have a responsibility
to find out what we can.
Yeah. And so at the very end, like the very climax where they've got a plan to, you know, to do in the thing, right? Dr. Carrington runs out in front of the thing and it's just like, no. Like, he's like, he uses the word superior a lot, of course, you know. And he's like, this thing is superior to us in every way. And like, please, I know you can understand me, even though there's no way to know that the thing actually understands.
Yeah,
what
certainly in that version. At least in the versions where it's like imitating humans, you might try.
He's like, I know you can understand me. Like, please, like, let's work together. Like, please teach me, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then the thing in like a very Frankenstein way just kind of goes like, rah, and like pushes him down. And then he like collapses and he's out for the rest of the film.
Yeah.
I think he's not dead, but he's just out for the rest of the film. And then, because they're trying to figure out, it's actually the woman, it's actually Nikki who comes up with the plan because they're like, well, how do you defeat a vegetable, you know? And she was like, cook it,
like
roast it, boil it,
the normal ways.
The ways that we do to vegetables. And so what they do is they basically set up like an electricity trap. And
which is kind of
electrocute the thing to death. And
that is one of the main weapons that they use.
And so the thing is defeated. And like, oh my God, this is just such an American early Cold War film.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it is just so, like you were saying, like, rah, rah, rah. The big bad has been taken down by, like, good old-fashioned American know-how.
Yeah.
Yay, American exceptionalism. Now Nikki and Pat can go get married and live out their heteronormative fantasy.
Yeah.
You know.
That's why you can't have a woman.
Well, you can't have a woman. Yeah. And then the way that it ends is with the journalist, Ned Scott. He's the whole time he's like, I've got to get this story out. We have to know, you know. But then of course, you know, the military's like, nope. We're not saying anything yet until we know blah 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 or this happens, you know.
Just
and then so
panic.
finally at the end of the movie, in the very final scene, Ned Scott gets to like radio his story, because the radios work the entire time. He's radioing to whoever and he's like, I got a story for you boys, you know, because it's 1951. And he's talking about, he goes on about how, like, you know, human ingenuity defeating evil, blah blah blah,
Unquenchable fire.
Yeah. And he's like, this is the message to anyone out there listening, like, watch the skies, vigilance, like that kind of thing, you know.
Yeah, Cold War.
Cold War, very, very Cold War. Tell the world, tell this to everyone, wherever they are, watch the skies everywhere. Keep looking, keep watching the skies. You know,
If you see something, say something.
See something,
which is
say
a
something.
later thing, but
which, I think is a result of 9/11, actually.
Yeah, it is, but
Anywho, so that's what the Thing from Another World is like. It's very different.
it's not
very different.
that similar to the short story either, which is interesting. You would think that there would be more.
But the way you explained the short story to me sounds much more like the 1982
It's very
version.
similar. Yeah, I think that was part of, because apparently Carpenter really loved the Thing from like that was so it's kind of interesting though that when he got involved with this, they went with a script that was way closer to the original.
And he's like, I think John Carpenter is also like quoted as saying that, like, you know, even though now The Thing is like this huge cult classic and people love it, like he's still quoted as saying that it is still not as good as The Thing from Another World.
And I think some of the people involved in The Thing from Another World were like, "Oh, this movie sucks, guys."
Yep.
The Thing is bad. I don't know why you did this remake.
The man who played Captain Patrick Hendry, his name's Keith Toby.
Yeah.
He was like, when it first came out, he was just like,
Bad.
How dare you? You know, that kind of thing.
Which is bullshit, but
Whatever. So a very different movie. Like, I was, you know, we were talking off mic that, like, both of these movies just like encapsulate America in the Cold War so beautifully, because, like, again, the original story is like, you know, kind of like World War II era,
right? Yeah, coming out of World War II.
but like the 1951 film and the 1982 film are like so both beautifully encapsulate where America is at that moment in dealing with the Cold War and the Red Scare.
Yeah,
Like, so beautifully. And like all those sci-fi movies from the 1950s, like The Blob, just basically being like propaganda, you know, just be like, oh, you know, yep, America's going to face some challenges and there's going to be some things we don't understand, but we will always be victorious because we are exceptional.
and I think that's interesting. Also, coming off of the
And
story.
capitalist.
Yeah, and capitalist. Yeah, there are capitalist readings of this story.
Very.
The Thing is capitalist, but we won't get into that. No, coming off the story, which is like, you know, a product of World War II, which I don't know, is a little bit more like human in general rather than like specifically, even though they are all American, there's no like specific like America, woo, sort of element to it. It's just a very human woo element.
Yeah, go
which is
humanity.
interesting. Yeah, you know, like good triumphed over evil sort of thing. And and also I think it's a little bit more preoccupied with like the horrors that science can rot, because they just, I mean, fucking yeah. Atomic weapons and all of that is like very much on the mind in a way that, like, I mean, definitely still is on the mind in the 80s, but in like a different way.
And I honestly think in that 1951 version, I really think that the US, especially like United States, like media, is still like really reveling in winning World War II.
Yeah.
You know, which is like, guys, we're so great. We defeated the Nazis.
Whereas
we can do anything.
In the 80s version, it's like communists could be anywhere.
Who's to say? Yeah.
They're hiding among us.
So those are kind of, you know, like we talked about, we wanted to like set up the sort of like
where the story came from to get to where it is.
And its sort of evolution to this 1982 film.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, obviously, I don't know where you want to start, but I think it's just worth stating what a huge theme in this film masculinity is.
That is where I want to start.
By, like, the sheer fact that there are no women.
Yeah.
First and foremost.
And, like, the thing of, like, the first reader of it being, the first editor being, like, this should have women, and the first movie adaptation being, like, here's some women.
Yeah.
And then now this version again is like, no, the only woman we have is a lady computer voice.
The lady computer voice,
Which
yes.
Mac, of course, is like calling baby until he loses to it. And then he calls it a cheating bitch and destroys it.
Yes.
Which is very foreshadowing how Mac hates to lose and will destroy everything rather than lose. He blows up the whole base at the end, you know?
Blow up the whole base at the
like,
end.
It's very like, because that's the masculine thing to do, is never accept defeat.
Right. So I found this pretty great little quote here. There was this Atlantic article by Noah Berlatsky.
Oh, I'm very familiar. Noah Berlatsky's written a lot about the thing.
Oh, okay. So then maybe you already know this.
Yeah. I don't know which one it came from.
So Noah Berlatsky says that unlike other typical horror genre films, women are excluded, right?
Yeah.
Allowing the thing to be identified as fear of not being a man or being homosexual.
Right. Yeah. I read that one. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Vice's Patrick Marlborough considered the thing to be like a scathing examination of manliness.
Yeah.
Noting that identifying the thing requires intimacy, confession, and empathy.
Yeah, which is just like
out of the creature. But
the
yeah,
masculine thing.
Male frailty, just like that is not an option. It's off the table.
Yeah.
So like we have these characters, and I think Mac is really like the biggest
coming out
example
with
of
his
it.
cowboy hat on. Like, that's not going to keep you protected in the cold. No. Why are you wearing a cowboy hat? That masculine freak.
Yeah, that the characters in this film that are like, and this whole idea is encapsulated by McCready specifically, is like they're kind of like trapped by pride and their emotional, like stunted emotional growth. Because men aren't allowed to feel feelings, right?
No, I think one of the most interesting like moments of that is when Mac's recording that message, because he's like, we might all die, but I need somebody to know what's going on here.
Yeah.
He says, nobody trusts anybody now, and we're all very tired.
Yeah.
But then he erases over that.
Oh.
And keeps recording something new. Did you hear that? He like rewinds.
Oh, I didn't catch that. But
and then keeps recording it. I'm pretty sure he erases over that, like that moment of like frailty or whatever you want to, emotion, whatever you want to call it. Because he has to be the strong American man.
Yeah, and he can't even say, we're tired.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. There's like, these men are totally incapable of confronting the truth, because confronting the truth would mean like, exposing themselves to like fear and embarrassment.
Yeah. And it's interesting that, I mean, Mac's so interesting for that, because they all seem to listen to him for the only reason that he's the one who's like a big, strong man. Like, not the only one who's a big, strong, but like, there's no reason why he should suddenly have this command position.
Right. That's actually really interesting. Yeah. Yeah. The like McCready is the one who's like the most like avoidant of emotional attachments, and like is also like the most paranoid.
Yeah.
The blood test is his idea.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, but that's also kind of what like allows him to become the hero in this film. Like, if we have a protagonist, it's Mac.
Though, interestingly enough, unlike the other versions of the story that we discussed, this one does not have a happy ending.
I know.
So maybe if they had a little bit of more emotional vulnerability, you know,
if they were a little more emotionally intelligent. Yeah,
we'll get to the gay stuff. But there is a Tumblr post that I love that was like, I love John Carpenter's The Thing. Do you think those men ever explored each other's bodies?
Yes.
No, because then they wouldn't have lost.
Oh, I see. But yeah, so like, McCready's like emotional detachment is like kind of what allows him to be the hero, but it is also ends up being his undoing, because like McCready and Childs like still are like completely distrusting of each other by the end of the film,
and they have no way of surviving really, because they're alone without any resources in the snow,
and they don't really know each other.
They don't.
Not really.
And they have no way to know if they're the thing or not. Or I mean, there are theories about that. We'll get into fan theories, but
yeah, I feel so. I will just say right off the top that I don't know if McCready is the thing, but if he is, I think he was like the thing from the beginning.
Oh yeah,
like he was either always the thing or never the thing. That's kind of where I'm feeling for McCready.
Well,
there's a lot of fan theories.
We'll put that in our pocket for
now.
Put
that in the pocket. Yeah.
But no, the masculinity, the fact that they use the gun as the symbol of who's in charge is just like
that's
such
true.
a symbol of American masculinity.
So
Like, they try to give it to Norris, and he's like, oh, I couldn't handle it. And so, of course, it goes to Mac.
Well, yeah, so traditionally, like, Gary
is the commander.
The station commander. And then it's the discovery of the destruction of the blood supply.
Yeah.
That they kind of freak out over, and Mac ends up becoming a new leader.
Interestingly, at that point, Gary has probably already made himself no longer a good leader, because he's the one who has the line after Bennings dies, where he's like, oh, Bennings was my friend for 10 years or something like that. Like, he's the only one who has this emotional
connection.
Yeah, he's
no,
like this friendship. Like, he was kind of, I mean, the other part I find interesting in terms of like that sort of trusting of each other. Why is it that Mac trusts Windows to be the one who's not tied up when they're doing the blood test?
Yeah.
And my only thing that I can think of is that he just thought that Windows was the one he could take if he needed to.
Right.
You know, like Windows kind of like, he's the radio operator and he's kind of a fuck up, you know, like, what's he going to do? Like,
but it is interesting that, like, Mac ends up being established as the leader, like, after a little bit of discussion, right?
Yeah, I mean, they bandy around. He doesn't just take charge.
Yeah.
But it's like, why not Childs? Well, racism. Why not?
But he's like, is it because, like, he is kind of, like, giving this kind of, like, bravado of, like, I'm willing to rise to the occasion?
Yeah. And I wonder if it is, like, even though they didn't end up putting in the movie, the idea that he is some sort of, like, war vet, military position. Right. Where it's like, he's seen shit. He's been through this sort of thing.
And, like, kind of understands, like, the way that, like, a combat hierarchy needs to, like, work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then what Max says to Childs, because Childs is like, well, give me the gun, right? And then Childs says that he's not even-tempered enough to lead. Mm-hmm. Which sounds like racist bullshit to me.
Yup, absolutely.
I don't think Childs is any less even-tempered than any of them.
No, I mean, when you see Childs and Mac, like, in comparison to each other, it's like, what's even the fucking difference between them?
What is the difference?
Which is why it's significant that they're the two at the end, because they're also kind of mirrors of each other.
Right. Well, and Childs is the chief mechanic. So, they kind of have, and then McCready's the helicopter pilot.
Yeah. Chief pilot. So, yeah, I mean, they're probably similarly ranked.
Similar skill sets, I'm sure. Yeah.
And, oh my God, speaking of, this is going back to the goddamn, how dare we ever be vulnerable with each other. They know that it likes to take people when they're alone, and they aren't immediately like, oh, let's use the buddy system.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
In Who Goes There, they don't just use the buddy system. They're like, we're teaming up in groups of 4.
There it is. Yeah.
Like, duh. It's just like, no, but they're so afraid of being vulnerable. They can't even do a fucking buddy system. No, they got to be like exceptional single men.
Yeah.
Just being rah-rah on their own. Like, what the fuck?
Yep. What
Big
idiots.
strong men.
What idiots.
I do think Windows is interesting because he has, he's the one that
Windows is interesting.
Matt kind of trusts, I think, just because he thinks he could take him. He's the one who has, who goes into a freeze response, which I honestly think should happen more often than it does in horror movies.
Yeah.
Like, a freeze response is such a natural response to have, but it's not a manly response to have. And then he's the one who, when he dies, it's because, I forget, it's not Palmer. It's the Palmer, when they find out Palmer's the thing during the blood test.
Yes.
Where he, like, kind of opens his head wide and, like, eats his head.
Yeah.
And, like, I don't forget, it might have been Noah Berlanti talking about it as, like a grotesque version of, like, kissing him.
Yeah.
It's face to face.
My theory is that Windows and Palmer, like, have a thing.
There's weird vibes.
Yeah.
There's weird vibes.
Because
that's how they die, is like head to head, like face to face, merging with each other. It's interesting. I'll say that.
And like, as they start to devolve into paranoia and chaos, like, you do notice, and again, this is the kind of thing, like, this is the great thing about this movie, is like, you could watch it so many times, but like, you really see, like, Windows and Palmer are like at each other's throats. Like, they are accusing each other, like telling each other to shut the fuck up and shut their mouth, and like fighting each other, even though there are like multiple other people involved. But like, for Windows and Palmer, it's like, nope, it's just us two. We're really the only two that matter.
Yeah, and it's okay. Two things I want to say
because you're in love.
Because you used to be in love,
or
and
used to be in love. Yeah.
No, and I think,
or you started to fall in love, and now this is happening.
You got scared, because of vulnerability and emotion. See, this is why I was okay. 3 things I want to say. The first one is, this is why I was kind of afraid to do the thing, because it's such a beloved cult classic,
of course,
especially by a certain subset of men.
Oh, it's so good.
And I'm like, we're
movie.
Just going to make gay jokes. People are going to hate this podcast and our dumb gay jokes, but shut up.
But I mean, like,
It's our podcast.
Yeah.
And also, it's there.
and also, yeah, maybe it should stop being so damn gay then.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do? You know? What other gay stuff?
Okay, yeah. No, the other thing I wanted to say was, that the other interesting thing is that one of the theories, because we see the dog early on creeping through the hallway, and then we get somebody's shadow, and we don't know who it is. I think the leading theory is that it's Palmer. It's I think it's between Palmer, like maybe Blair or Knowles or something.
We do
somebody else.
see the dog lick Bennings.
Yeah.
And then-
Bennings might have been the other one.
And Bennings is the one that is like who dies first.
Yeah. It
Right.
might have been that. I don't remember. But I think the leading theory is that it's Palmer. So it'd be interesting if it was Palmer the whole time. Even through all of that, because he's such a perfect imitation. So even if there was vibes between them, those vibes would still be there because he's a perfect imitation.
He's a perfect imitation. And Palmer's the one who, like, he's the one who's smoking weed the whole time. And I'm just like, my big question is, like, Palmer, where did you get that marijuana?
I have so many questions about, like, okay, so, like, on the same side as that, why bring roller skates to Antarctica?
I don't know.
Because, I mean, no, there's just this interesting thing about working in really remote locations.
Yeah.
Like Antarctica, is that it's important to avoid what they call duplication. So, like, whenever possible, you should get a single tool that can do multiple things for you, or use the same tool for multiple different jobs.
I see.
Because otherwise, you have to carry a bunch of gear across these big... and, like, whatever you can get the weight down is important. So, fucking roller skates are heavy.
They are, yeah.
They're metal. And it's just... But also, avoiding duplication. Oh, the themes.
The themes, though.
The themes. They could have pulled that out.
But also...
But yeah, the weed is weird too.
Knowles loves to roller skate.
Just let Knowles love to roller skate.
He's living his best roller
But it
skating
is such
life.
a weird, like, disco black guy stereotype. Like, cool guy. It's like, it's fucking weird.
It is weird. I know. Yeah.
The third thing I was going to say.
Yeah.
Is my little gay headcanon is all on Mac and Fuchs.
Fuchs. Yes.
They have that vibe of, like, the dude who's, like, the alpha male guy in charge, and then, like, the second command who's, like, the only one he trusts.
Right, yeah, because Fuchs is he's the one who's like, can I talk to you?
Yeah.
Alone?
I know, and all the other guys are, like, a little bit nice about it, but then let it go. They're like, And then, they go outside so they can have, like, this private conversation, and, like, I'm not sure exactly what they're in, like, some machinery or something.
Yeah, it's like a snow dozer or
so
something.
that they could be, like, warm, but still outside and have a private moment where nobody can hear them.
Yeah.
But it's still a little cold, so they might have to be a little close.
Who's to say? Yeah.
And, like, Mac just kind of goes along with what Fuchs, like, in terms of Max trusting people.
Yeah.
Like, there's not a lot of people he trusts, but he kind of, like, as much as he does, he kind of trusts Fuchs until Fuchs dies.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, Fuchs is the one, because he's like the assistant biologist.
Yeah.
Because Blair is the senior biologist,
Yes.
but he kind of gets disposed pretty quickly.
Yeah, because he goes world crazy.
He goes crazy. But yeah, Fuchs is like, he's the one who figures out like really, really important information. He's like, I think it's imitating, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I think it's probably like we should be preparing our own food.
Yeah, we shouldn't be
drinking out of our
sharing
own
stuff.
cups. Yeah.
And just in the gay version of that exists in my head,
Yeah.
the moment when Mac finds Fuchs, like, glasses all, like, kind of scrunched up and burned, I'm just like, oh, that's so tragic, honey. Your boyfriend.
Yeah. Yeah.
But-
and also that, like, that self-sacrifice Fuchs makes. Like,
Yeah.
he probably burned himself.
Just so he wouldn't get taken, because he understood the stakes, like nobody else did. Well, except for Blair.
And Blair. Yeah, but Blair's crazy.
Yeah. But, I mean, I think in terms of talking about the, not sharing things, not stuff, we should talk a little bit about one of the other readings of this film, even though you kind of disagree with it because of the timing, is the HIV epidemic stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
Because it's a little early for it to have been a, like, known thing that was going, or even a subconscious thing that was going into it.
Anything that would be, like, a theme in, like, a major
Yeah.
American media in 1982, I just don't think.
Right. But it is notable.
But it fits.
This, like, fear of contamination.
Yep.
HIV could only be identified with blood tests, like,
Using the blood test. You can't tell who has it just by looking at them.
this real fear of, like, permeation.
Yep.
Of, like, sharing of bodily fluids.
Yes. Oh, yeah. And the very, like, incorrect but pervasive ideas at the time that, like, saliva could transmit HIV. Yeah.
And also the dumb, stupid ideas that still exist today about, like, gay people recruiting. And the thing is literally going around turning people into it, sort of like recruiting to the gay agenda or whatever. Like, there is something there. And, Noah Berlatsky is one of the people I look to for that. there was the Atlantic article, which was kind of actually mostly about the remake, because they add women, and his article is basically like why it doesn't work to add women to the thing. You know,
Interesting. Because it makes it less gay.
yeah. I mean, well, no, because he writes, strong, manly men who are male-focused and uninterested in femininity are in danger of becoming homosexual not men. On the other hand, men who are too women-identified are also in danger of becoming not men, aka things.
Things, yep.
So, like, what the thing does to their male bodies is, like, distorts them beyond recognition. It's, like, literally emasculating them, but also the distrust that they have of each other means that the men are constantly looking at each other, constantly gazing at each other, constantly, like, it has a little bit of a cruising vibe, watching over each other, trying to figure out which of them can pass as human, you know, that whole idea of passing as a, you know, straight.
Yeah.
So, like, they're all on guard, but they're all studying each other. And if they could just be vulnerable with each other, maybe they could figure out. I think that's a big element in the. I didn't watch the 2011 version, but I think a part of it.
I watched it once a while ago, and I remember not being particularly.
I think a large part of it is that she knows the people so well that she can kind of suss out just by studying them which one is the thing, which is just like not an element here.
Not the point. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not the point.
Yeah.
Like the only way to like really figure out, I don't know. It's just like this constant tension in this film with this like distrust and the isolation, which ultimately wins out. And like, yeah, the idea that at the end, Mac could be a thing, Childs could be a thing. And literally all they can do is sort of like sit there watching each other.
And drinking.
Yeah, and Mac even has that line
whatever.
about like, let's just see where things go.
Why don't we just sit here for a while?
And
see
I don't
what
know.
happens. Yeah.
I don't know.
It's so interesting because Mac, that's so interesting at like the very end because like, I don't know, Mac, again we can talk about the fan theories about whether Mac and or Childs is the thing at the end. But like, it's so interesting because Mac is just like such a, and we're going to play archetypes. So like athlete, acting, action, right? And then at the end, Childs is like, what do we do? And he's like, why don't we just sit still for a minute?
Yeah,
like, what if you just sat still for a minute? Yeah.
I can't decide. Do you want to hear this really long quote from Noah Berlatsky from his blog?
Sure.
Okay. It's like this whole paragraph that I just think is brilliant in terms of just like the gay themes. And then we will get off the gay themes, okay?
Sure.
Okay.
If we have to.
Noah Berlatsky writes, my argument is that the thing is structured around and draws its moral and emotional force from homosexual panic. From this perspective, Bill Lancaster is exactly right. There aren't any women in these situations. They would be gratuitous because homosexual panic is about men doing manly things with each other. Women aren't a part of the psychodrama. The particular paranoia here, the particular fear, and the particular pleasure would be impossible if there were women characters. As one example, there is a moment in the film when many of the men are standing around in the snow discussing their plight. Childs asks, if I were an imitation, a perfect imitation, how would you know it was really me? There is an uncomfortable silence, and no wonder. Childs is asking about intimacy, and the biblical sense in how would you know isn't all that far beneath the surface. Indeed, if we remember Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the way to identify an imposter is to kiss her, or in this case, him. The men, wrapped up in snow gear, eyes concealed behind dark glasses, all seem to be contemplating, with roughly equal trepidation, the frightening prospect of death through not knowing, and the equally frightening prospect of knowledge and its implications of intimacy. You almost expect them all to clear their throats and start talking gruffly about football.
Yeah, truly.
Like, and I think that's it. And I think that is a valid gay, reading of the film.
Well, and
worth exploring.
And in so many ways, like throughout the history of the Cold War, like homosexuality has been wrapped up as like adjacent to communism.
Right, yeah. The whole lavender scare that happened.
So like
of specifically rooting out homosexuality in
this
like
could
the
be
government.
An allegory for communism, right?
Yeah.
And it could be like an allegory for homosexuality and just like the way that we socialize men to be emotionally stunted.
Yeah.
Like it's both.
It's both.
Isn't that great? And it's so interesting that while like we know that this couldn't have possibly been on purpose, but like then there is this like really clear connection to like the HIV scare.
Yeah.
So it just like it doesn't.
It's interesting layers.
It really, really helps the gay reading of it.
It really deepens
even though
the
it
film.
wasn't meant to be there.
Yeah, if you want to go there though, it deepens the film in really interesting ways that I think are worth getting into. And don't be weird about it, guys listening to our podcast.
All two guys
who listen to our podcast.
So do we have anything else to say about paranoia, violence, and the loss of self?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I have tons to say.
Oh, okay. Good. Let's do it then.
Yeah.
What else?
Because the other big theme in this film, obviously, is the paranoia.
Yeah.
It starts to set in only like a half hour into the movie. There's lots of great lines about trust and who do we trust. And my favorite line from Mac, that's like, trust is a hard thing to come by. Why don't you try trust in the Lord? Which is such a like Mac, I'm not going to be vulnerable thing to say.
Yeah, it's a very like, let's change the subject.
Yeah. And then there's the part where they think maybe Mac is the thing because he went away and then came back by himself.
Right. And then they find his tattered
uniform. And somebody's like, Childs, what if we're wrong about Mac being a thing? And Childs just like, then we're wrong. And I'm like, you're right. Yeah. If you're wrong, then you're wrong. Who fucking cares?
Right. Because Mac does straight up kill Clark.
Yeah. In a moment of paranoia.
Yeah.
And Childs has the line where it's like, then Clark was human. That means you're a murderer. Which is like interesting. And it's interesting that the thing is like smart enough to frame other people. I still don't understand. Like, is it because it was imitating somebody smart enough to do that? Like, what is its brain? But I don't know. But one thing that I think the novel has that the film doesn't, just sort of on that, just because I'm thinking about it again, because we know more about the thing in the novel because it's like, it's a psychic being or whatever. So we know a little bit more about what it's trying to do, which we don't have in this one.
Yeah.
But another thing it doesn't have is as much paranoia about one's own body. Like, there's a lot more questioning of, like, if I was a thing, would I even know if I was the thing? If I was such a perfect imitation, like a mimic all the way down to my thoughts?
Yeah.
Then how would I even know?
At the cellular level. And this is actually, like, it's stated, like, through the like, creators of this film, like, as part of the design. Like, it was agreed that anyone who was assimilated would be a perfect imitation and would not know they were the thing.
Which is until it, like, was too late. And it's, so it's so interesting because they spent all this time being really afraid of the, like, capital O other.
Yeah.
But what they're really afraid of is, like, the loss of the self.
Yeah.
And even worse, like, losing the self and nobody would recognize it because they're not vulnerable with each other. So
and
they couldn't recognize it.
No one actually knows who they are in
Yeah.
the first place, let alone.
Yeah. But I think what I really love
Yeah.
is, like, the people who choose either, like, outward violence in response to that or, like, self-destruction. Mm-hmm. So, like you said, when, like, Max shoots Clark because he's, like, and he was wrong about it.
Yeah.
And, like, what we said with the foreshadowing of Mac destroying the computer because he will ultimately always choose violence and murder over, like, losing control.
Such a man.
Because he's not going to lose control.
No.
And I think it's significant that the first kill in the movie is not by the thing. It's by the Americans killing the Norwegians.
Shoot that Norwegian, yeah.
Which, to be fair...
right in the fucking eye.
Yeah. Which is,
Yep.
And it's like, and of course it ends with, like we already said, ends with Childs and Mac because those were the ones who spent so much time being aggressive and, like, accusing each other and, like, why are you looking at me like that? And, like, what are we doing? And Childs still seems to want to do a little bit of, like, well, what are we going to do? And Mac's like, dude, what could we do?
What's left to do?
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, in the condition we're in, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But then there are the people who self-destruct, like the Norwegian who we see killed himself.
Yeah.
And, like, Fuchs who probably burned himself alive.
Yeah.
And, like... It took them until they were down to, like, 3 people, but eventually they're like, we probably just need to blow this whole place up.
Yeah.
Like, that's what we need to do. My favorite then, though, we can start talking about him because we haven't yet, Blair.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
Well, I love the
Blair,
scene where they go to visit him. And when he does the thing about, like, I'm much better, I won't harm anybody. He's obviously the thing at that point.
Yeah.
But there's the noose hanging in the front of the shot.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh.
And even before he's banished to that tool shed, he's the one to fully understand the severity of the situation.
Yeah.
He's the one, like, we need to start, like, thinking about a solution to the situation in which we do not survive.
Yeah. Because he's the one, he gets the little computer simulation.
And he's willing to go there before anybody else will.
Yeah. He does his little thing where he's like 75% chance a crew member is already infected, which is true.
Which was true.
It infect the whole world in, like, some 200-something hours, 200,000 something hours.
Yeah.
Like, so yeah, he immediately makes sure he's like, I'm going to destroy the helicopters.
Yep, I'm going to kill the
everything.
dogs.
Yep. He's just like destroys everything. And yeah, that sort of takes me back to the idea of, like, what's the responsibility of the scientists and stuff. I don't remember who says it, but it's a line early on where they're like, should we destroy this weird thing? What should we do? Should we burn it? And one of them is like, you can't burn the find of the century. That thing's going to win someone a Nobel Prize.
Yeah.
And it's like, what is the responsibility of the scientist and what is the goal of the scientist?
Yeah. This makes me think, do you remember in senior year when we took theory of knowledge?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. It's like, it's so interesting, kind of like these eternal questions of, like, what is the responsibility of a knower?
Yeah.
Right? Like, once we have this knowledge, what is our responsibility? Are there should we seek knowledge even unethical basis.
Right.
Bases, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, like, Blair's the one who, he knows. Like, he's the one with the knowledge.
Yeah.
And he's the one who kind of, like, is destroyed by it first.
And it's also interesting to think about, like, at what point he becomes the thing. Because my reading of it was that he got turned at some point when he was in that shed.
Yes.
Which, I don't know, other people might disagree with. But I think that's
what
why,
I think. Yeah.
I think that's why he made a noose, because he knew he was going to get changed soon. And why he didn't end up using the noose is because he got changed.
Got changed first, yeah. And then he, like, that's when they go to find him. They split up again. Poor choice. They split up.
Every groups of 4, groups of 2 at least. Come on.
Yeah, preferably 4. Yeah. And so. And they go to check on him, and then he's nowhere to be found. And they find, like, some weird little underground
That's
thing.
so confused me for a while.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, because what they realize in the novel, it's, like, a little bit clearer. They're like, oh, Blair actually was turned pretty early, and what he did, he went crazy so that he would be isolated, so that he would have time. He'd have, like, a whole week to build his little atomic jetpack thing. Yeah. Which is an interesting element, like, because we do see that Blair thing, used that helicopter he destroyed and, like, some of the other equipment he destroyed to start making his new ship.
That's right. He, like, took some stuff from it. And is that, like, so here's the thing. Blair's a biologist.
Yeah.
Right? So, like.
So that's the thing.
Yeah, where's this knowledge coming from? It's reminding me of the Creeper. It's just like,
yeah,
how does he have all this knowledge? Like,
but if it's like the thing was this alien who knew how to make spaceships because it came from outer space, you know, then like it's synthesizing Blair's knowledge with its own knowledge.
Crazy.
Because it's a joining of 2 things.
And then it's Blair that ends up killing Gary, right?
Yeah, he does.
When they get underground, Blair gets Gary.
And that's the scene that got deleted, was him killing Knowles too.
Oh, okay. Well then, gosh, like, closure for Knowles.
I know.
You know, like, it's pretty fucked up that, like, he's already really one-dimensional and, like, really on the cusp of being a racist caricature.
Yeah.
And, like, and we don't even, like, his fate is unknown.
Yeah. I mean,
like,
you assume he died, because what else?
Yeah.
Like, the whole base blew up.
God, tell us we don't care about Knowles without telling us we don't care about
Knowles. Yeah. Oh, my God. And then my other question, in terms of things that are kind of left at the end, is, like, did they leave a note? I know Mac recorded that thing, but if he was in that base, he recorded that, and then they blew everything up. Like, did it get blown up? Because if not, the rescue crew is going to get there in the spring. Yeah. And then they're going to find that UFO, because it does not get exploded in this version.
It does not. No.
And, like, do they know if there are other creatures in there? Other things? Like, or is it all just going to happen again? Right. Does it never end?
And I think that this, like, again, just, like, so beautifully plays into, like, just the nihilism of this film.
Yeah.
And, like, at the end, like, it really doesn't matter.
No.
It just doesn't matter.
And that's kind of, where Mac ends up. He's like, nah, we're just going to drink this.
Doesn't matter. And, like, and of course now, you know, living in 2024, it's just like, nihilism.
Ain't that nice?
That's kind of where I'm at by now, after the last, you know, what year, 2024? Yeah, after, like, the last 8 years.
I mean,
I'm pretty...
hard, you know. It's hard.
But what does it matter, though? You know? Yeah.
It's easy to lose faith.
Totally.
But that's also why it's kind of nice to have movies that are more hopeful, because you need that hope from somewhere, which is why I think the recession era audience was like, nah.
I need something.
I need E.T.
Yeah. I need something that's gonna, make me happy and give me hope. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So what else about that?
Since we're talking about the ending, should we finally just
Let's
talk about
it? Yeah.
Do you think Mac or Childs or whatever?
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah.
So, like I mentioned earlier, I think that I don't know if Mac is the thing, but if he is, he was one of the earlier.
I mean, they do find. I mean, maybe that moment when they are framing Mac, maybe it's not framing. Maybe he is a thing.
Or he never was, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of theories about Mac versus Childs. There's also a really great theory that, from what I could tell, originates on Reddit, of course, from a user called Don't Waste Ink, which is a good name. And they basically state that there are 2 things that are competing with each other. So there's one thing, which is the dog, Jed. Jed licks Bennings, so then Bennings is assimilated, right? Or it becomes an imitation, if you will. And then Bennings, in the next shot, drinks from McCready's J&B
bottle.
Bottle.
People have pointed that out, yeah.
then we get to see MacReady drink from that bottle, right? And then the next scene, MacReady's torn shirt is discovered by Fuchs, and then Fuchs is found burned later, right? And then MacReady visits Blair, brings Blair's vodka bottle, takes a swig from the vodka bottle before leaving it for Blair.
Yeah.
The next shot is Blair looking at the vodka bottle. After this, Blair is wearing different clothes, is calmer, and probably infected.
Yeah.
Then, so that's like one thing, right? But then there's another thing, according to this theory, there's another thing, which is like the alien corpse taken from the Norwegian site. Or another theory I've read is that the Norwegian in the helicopter is also a thing, trying to take down the rival thing. That's the dog.
Yeah. That just seems complicated.
It does seem pretty complicated.
Like, unnecessarily
and
so.
I really, really, really don't think that John Carpenter thought it through like that. And I have some evidence to back that up.
And does this also involve, because the other big deal is that last moment when Mac hands his drink over, that same, whatever that alcohol was, JB, whatever, fucking thing, over to Childs. And
It's scotch.
Childs takes a sip, and then Mac kind of like smiles or whatever. And
Yeah,
people
and
make
then-
a big fucking deal about it.
And then the theme song begins to play.
So
right?
like, people make a big deal either because that could be Mac infecting Childs, or there's the theory about how, since he was making all those Molotov cocktails, that there's actually like, you know, something other than alcohol in there because he was setting it up to be whatever, I don't know, as a trap or whatever. And so the fact that Childs drinks it and doesn't react means that he's the thing, and Mac proved that he was the thing or something. They're all really fucking convoluted.
They really, really
and
are.
don't actually have evidence.
So here's what I found, because this is part of the thing. One of the cinematographers, I don't know how to say this person's last name, Dean Chundy.
Sure.
Chundi, whatever, was one of the photographers, and this is part of it. This is something that the cinematography department decided, is that they would deliberately provide like a little eye illumination to someone who's uninfected, and which we don't see in Childs at the end, right? But also the like visible breath, because they're in very cold air, right?
Yeah.
Which again, Childs does not have.
But I also heard that last scene took a lot of reshoots.
Yeah. Dean Chudney or whatever his name is, he says that like that was straight up a technical issue while filming. Well, and also
problems with
and
that
that John Carpenter was like actually didn't want that to happen at the end because he wanted the ending intentionally vague.
Well, that's kind of how I landed.
Yeah.
That like we can theorize all we want, but that kind of misses the point.
Oh my gosh, stop right there. So exactly. Because I say here, like during production, Carpenter considered having MacReady be infected and an alternate ending showing MacReady having been rescued and definitely testing as uninfected. Kurt Russell, who we have not even really mentioned.
Yeah.
Second time on the pod. Kurt Russell, reach out.
Yeah. Looking gorgeous with that hair.
Oh my sweet Jesus, yes. Kurt Russell has said that analyzing that scene for clues is missing the point.
That's how I felt.
You're just missing the point. And like, God, what a human thing to like want the answers.
Yeah, no,
and to be able to find knowledge, but it's just not there.
We're just like the characters who are like trying to come up with these tests so that we can ease our suspicions. But like, there's no way for us to definitively know that there aren't more things out there. And that's the point. Like even if the thing is completely killed, the paranoia it left behind survives.
Yes.
And like, that's the point.
And just like
that paranoia is killing them.
To add to like the nihilistic undertones of this film, like it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
No. It doesn't matter whether Childs is a thing or MacReady's a thing or they're both things.
Yeah.
Or they're both human.
I mean, because there was also the version that Carpenter was like, I don't support this version because it was one that was released on TV that had the alternate ending where you see the dog running away at the end. There's a dog that gets away or something.
Yes.
And like, that's dumb because, it needs to be ambiguous at the end.
Yeah. That's
like trying to figure it out is like, no.
That's the point.
You're just getting into the same trap that all these men did.
Yep.
And like...
And it was their downfall.
Yeah.
Yep. But again, like, I do just want to say, because we haven't talked about Kurt Russell, really.
Yeah, we should.
That I just love him so much.
Yeah,
I think he does great.
Yeah. I don't think I had much of an opinion on Kurt Russell until we started this pod. And then I was like,
God, I love Kurt Russell.
He's
again,
wonderful.
he reminds me of my dad.
Yeah.
And I cannot wait for us to cover one more film of him so
I can make a paper doll.
So he gets his own paper doll,
yeah,
like Rose
to go
McGowan.
with the Rose McGowan one.
Yeah.
I know, we need to find the other one.
Yeah, we'll
And,
figure something out.
What's the name of the actor who plays Childs?
Oh, Keith David.
Keith David. Yeah,
He's
Keith
great,
David.
too.
He's really great in this, too.
Yeah. Although interesting, something I didn't mention is that, like, Childs has, like, an interesting kind of, like, I don't know what to call it. When, like, he starts to see this mounting evidence of, like, what people are really just would consider extraterrestrials. He refers to it as voodoo bullshit.
Yes. There's the other guy, I forget which one, if it was Windows or Palmer, one of them, who's like going on about like ancient aliens and all that bullshit.
Oh yeah,
and
they built the pyramids.
Yeah,
like, oh, don't start that
and then
shit.
Childs comes in with voodoo bullshit. I'm like, well, that's a different thing too.
And I was like, interesting. Where do you see the voodoo coming in here, Childs? Like,
and is it just because some white guy was writing a black character and they're like, what do
voodoo,
black people do? Voodoo.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's weird.
Was it Palmer that was going off about ancient aliens, or was it Windows?
It was one of them, I think.
It would make sense for it to be Palmer.
I think it might have been Palmer.
He's smoking too much weed.
I think it might have been Palmer.
Yeah.
But like I said, these characters got really confused in my head.
They do, yeah. And so like
they're a little interchangeable.
And I also really needed to keep track of like what their job was. I'm like, why are you here?
Yeah.
You know? But luckily, this is such a beloved film, and people have spent so much time and energy into like setting that up that it wasn't hard to find. But who's the who? This is probably like my third or fourth time watching this film, and I was just like, oh, okay, yeah, that person and that person,
yeah. And there are definitely moments apparently on rewatches, which I'm not sharp enough to catch, of like once you know that like Bennings is already a thing, and Palmer is already a thing, you can see moments where they like where all the other characters react and go running off while they sort of stay back. Or like they kind of flank Fuchs at one moment and sort of look at him like they're trying to get him alone and stuff. There are like so many things you can get on a rewatch once you like know the characters better.
Once you know what you're looking for, yeah.
But it's hard to know the characters better because they're, I don't know.
Speaking of the characters, you want to play archetypes?
Yes, let's play. Okay, this is going to be an interesting. This is a subversion of archetypes.
It truly is. But however, I was thinking about this. Maybe just for an uninitiated listener, we just like give a quick overview of how to play this game.
Yeah, archetypes comes from, if you listen to our very first episode, Cabin in the Woods. The idea in the movie Cabin in the Woods is that these elder gods, which are basically just horror fans, need 5 archetypes to be killed so that they can be satiated.
Yeah, representation of 5 different kinds of people.
And first is the whore.
Yeah.
She always dies first and is like needs to put on a show of some sort.
Yeah, because she needs to be punished for her transgressions. Right.
Yeah, and then there's the scholar, the athlete, and the fool, who are just sort of in there.
Yeah.
And then the virgin comes last, and she can live, maybe.
Live or die as fate decides.
Yes, yes. So we love to play that game whenever we have horror films because the whole point is that it's based on, Joss Whedon was basing it on the tropes of specifically, I think, slashers, but other films too. That always has like a whore who dies first, some promiscuous woman who dies first. And then there's always the kind of athlete jock guy. And there's always the smart guy or nerd. And there's always the comic relief guy. And then there's the final girl who tends to be virginal, if not literally a virgin, virginal or pure in some way.
Very, yeah.
And like not like the other girls.
Of course. So we've got a lot of characters here.
Yes.
So like, what do you want to? What do you want to do?
I think I just want to talk about them generally because I think what we were talking about what I meant by our subversion of archetypes is that what makes this film interesting is like, archetypes can be hard because it has this very specific gender dynamic of the whore and the virgin are pretty much always women.
Yeah.
And I make arguments about them not having to be women, but that's what they're meant to be.
Yeah.
And this obviously is a film without women. So there is no whore inversion, which means there can be no first kill and there can be no last survivor, final girl. So really what we have is a room full of athletes, scholars, and fools.
Yeah.
And like, how does that change a horror film?
Right. Well, if you want to go with it this way, obviously I wrote down the death order because I know a lot of people die. Most people, pretty much everybody dies in this film.
Yeah, I mean, even Childs and Mac at the end,
they're not going to make it.
I mean, there is technically, I guess, the video game that came out afterwards, or the comic book.
There was a comic book,
yeah, that was like canon-ish.
Yeah,
has Childs died of hypothermia and Mac made it out somehow, but like,
not buying it.
That seems unlikely.
Not buying it.
And even if Mac did make it out, are you sure he's not a thing?
Exactly. And like, I love when like a horror movie like this doesn't have a happy ending.
I know. I think
it's okay. Like,
and I like it having an ambiguous ending. I think sitting in ambiguity is good for us.
It's good for you. Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, obviously, technically, the Norwegians die first.
Yeah, but I feel like that's
the dogs.
That's like going to Scream and saying Drew Barrymore dies first. Like, sure, but she's not the whore.
She's not, no.
You know, Tatum is.
But Tatum doesn't die first.
Yeah, but she is, you know.
Early. She's early.
Yeah.
So technically, of our cast of characters, Bennings is the one who dies first.
Yeah.
And Bennings is
literally, well,
he's the meteorologist.
Yeah. He's kind of just some guy.
So I guess that makes him the whore.
Some people, I think it might have been Noah Berlatzi, also pointing out how his scene, we have the corpse behind him when he's in, you know, when he does get taken. Mm-hmm. He's the one who's in the room alone with the corpse for a little moment because they think it's just a dead body. And like he bends over and it's like kind of an ass shot.
Oh.
And then he gets taken by those tendrils that like wrap around him. Like there's something suggestive in there.
All right. So.
And then Windows comes in and sees it because Windows is always around when the weird gay shit is happening.
Right. So Bennings is the whore. That's good to know. That's established. Check that off the list.
I mean, it's that or Windows because he's always around for it. He's the one who makes out with the thing.
And then it's Fuchs dies.
Oh, Fuchs.
And
He's
then,
definitely a scholar more than anything else.
Truly.
And then Blair are clearly scholar archetypes.
And then it's Norris and Dr. Copper. Because remember, Norris, he kind of like is incapacitated. And Dr. Copper tries to...
Yeah, Norris has the heart attack. Because the idea is that the thing is such a perfect imitation. He imitated Norris's bad heart. He just had a heart attack, I guess. Yeah. And that scene that everybody talks about of the chest opening up, which is great effects.
Yeah.
And they actually got an amputee to play that part.
Yep. Yeah.
Which is fucking dope.
Yeah.
I love that. But yeah, I think they're both also kind of just scholars.
Yeah, Norris is an interesting character because, well, he's wearing a sweater most of the time.
Yeah, he's very mild-mannered.
Very mild-mannered.
He's the one who said he couldn't handle being in charge and taking the gun. Yeah. I think he has one moment where he kind of shouts and shoves because everybody at that point is getting up there and excitable.
Yeah.
Because they're all at their wit's end.
Yeah.
But no, he's very of the scholar archetype.
Right, and then, I mean, Dr. Copper's a doctor.
He's a scholar.
Right. And then we've got Clark, Palmer, Windows, Gary, Blair, Knowles.
And they're all kind of... I mean, we kind of have Palmer as maybe a fool because he's smoking.
I think Palmer is a fool.
Yeah.
Yes,
and honestly, there's a bit of that in Mac, too.
A fool?
His reliance on alcohol.
Yeah. I also find, honestly...
Though that can be a jock thing, too, an athlete thing, too.
Right.
When it's specifically alcohol.
I think Windows also is a bit of a fool.
Yeah. He's the one who wears sunglasses.
He is.
Yeah, I think that's why his nickname is Windows.
Oh, okay. And he also...
Eyes are the windows into the soul. He's wearing his little window shades, you know.
But he also, he gets a head injury as well, which to me is significant. He gets hit in the head before he gets eaten by...
Yeah, he's the one who has the freeze response, which is a very full response to have.
Yeah.
Instead of doing the jock action thing or the scholar, like, figure it out thing. He just freezes.
Yeah, I think really, because of Palmer's, like, marijuana use, I think Palmer's really a fool.
Yeah, ancient alien
and he's
shit.
also the assistant mechanic. He's not even the chief mechanic.
So, like... And what about Knowles? Would you put him more of a fool or athlete? He's a roller skater.
Yeah, he does seem like a little foolish in that he seems like a pretty fun-loving dude.
Which is the fool thing. Yeah, he's listening to music, which, I don't know.
And roller skating and...
Yeah. Honestly, it gives a little bit horror vibes, the listening to music and dancing and stuff, you know?
Right, yeah.
But, like, yeah. He's not... But they just so poorly characterize some of these characters that it's hard.
Yeah. But then Gary and Blair... Oh, Blair's
obviously a scholar.
He's a senior biologist.
Gary, I guess, is an athlete because he's like commanding officer.
Yeah, I guess.
But he's
because he starts out as in charge. So he kind of like starts with that power.
He gets very emasculated.
Yeah, and then Mac takes over.
Yeah, and then
Mac is just such an athlete.
Mac and Childs are both athletes.
Yeah.
Technically, Mac has a little bit of scholar stuff. I mean, we first see him playing chess, but
that's true.
He loses it. You know, they all have a little bit of the vibes in there because they're here as like researchers and stuff.
Yeah.
But there's just really there's no final girl virgin and they fucking lose.
Yeah, like it's like in some ways Mac is the final girl.
Yeah.
Really.
But he has none of the hallmarks of a final girl. Not even the like badass, kick-ass sort of way of like Ripley and Alien. You know? Who still has some of those final girl things of like, I don't know. Would you consider Mac to be somewhat sexless?
He is kind of sexless.
There's that aspect.
But they kind of all are.
That's the thing. It's hard to pinpoint one out.
So this is the thing, guys. Don't just, when you're, in a horror movie, make sure that you're like evenly representing all 5 archetypes.
Yeah. Because otherwise shit's not going to go well for you. You need all of the archetypes represented, or you're just going to like...
And again, like, this is maybe why, a good reason for that critique of the characters being like pretty one-dimensional.
Yeah, is there's just not enough variation.
They're all jocks and scholars.
There's just no variation there.
And like the fool is only a fool because he like smokes a little weed.
Yeah, because he still is like a mechanic or whatever, he still is there to like kind of be a jockey scholar. Yeah. And yeah, and they all fucking lose because they keep doing the jock athlete thing of like shooting first and asking questions. That's literally their first problem.
Yep.
They shoot the Norwegian instead of like trying to figure out what's going on there.
Yep.
It's hard because the Norwegian guys are like shooting at them and have like bombs and shit, but grenades. But like literally ask questions and like wonder about this dog. Maybe they were trying to take down this dog because it had fucking rabies. That would be my thought.
Right.
Don't put it in with your other dogs.
Or not only do they not put it in with the other dog, well, they do later, but first they just let it meander.
Fucking meander. They let it meander and then they put it
all day.
And like there's no way that fucking what's the name of the guy who's in charge of the dogs?
Oh,
who loves the dogs so much? Clark.
Yeah.
He loves his dogs. There's no way he would just let an unknown dog go be with his dogs.
Just go be with his dogs.
Without like introducing them first or something?
Yeah.
Like, no, that is not best practices, Clark.
No. And yeah, Clark would definitely be like, all right, let me get a look at this dog here rather than just let it meander around camp all day.
They're like biologists here. They're not going to be like medical doctor. Nobody's going to be like, why did they want to kill this dog?
Right. Or like, gosh, that guy was yelling in Norwegian and I don't speak Norwegian, but he seemed upset.
Maybe he had something. Maybe he wasn't just a crazy Swede because they think he's Swedish.
But he's Norwegian. Yeah.
Like examine this dog. Oh my God, they're such dummies. This is why,
So like even less scholarly in that way.
Yeah.
Like more jocular.
Yeah, there's just too much athlete energy.
Yeah.
You cannot survive a horror film with just athlete energy, which almost seems counterintuitive because you need people who can like fight and charge in and stuff.
Yeah.
But you can't have only that.
Yeah, you need like, and I mean, there are those scholars who figure out the severity of the situation, and Blair again is like the first one to be like, we're probably gonna die.
Yeah, and Fuchs very quickly is like, I'm gonna kill myself before I become a problem for everybody else.
Yeah,
and
but like then they're just kind of like, well, that's it then. But it's like, no, keep scholar.
Yeah, buddy system. You dumb. If there was a lady there, she would have been like, I know the importance of a buddy system.
Yeah,
because I know about rape culture.
There's a really great an episode of The Simpsons where Lisa and Bart go on a 3rd grade field trip, and their teacher is, like, use the buddy system, and the teacher pairs up Bart and Lisa, and then of course Bart and Lisa go off on some adventure, and they're not on the bus to go back to school, and the teacher's like, does everybody have their buddy? And they're like, yeah, but like, okay, let's go. And then she then later finds out that Bart and Lisa are missing, and she's so distraught, and she's like, if the buddy system doesn't work, I don't know what to believe in.
Truly, though, what else do we have in this world?
What else do we have in the world?
Certainly not vulnerability between men.
Definitely not.
That's really one of the main things that virgins and whores provide, actually, is relationship connections.
Yeah, and vulnerability, and
both the virgin and the whore.
Emotional intelligence
and physical openness, honestly.
Also, right.
Knowing each other in both an emotional and a physical way, which would help these guys.
Would really, really help. Yeah.
But here we are. So this has been Deep Thoughts, Shallow Plots.
Yeah. Join us next month. We are going to overcorrect.
Yes.
From a movie with only men to a movie with mostly women. There's still a couple dudes. But we're going to be watching The Descent.
Yeah, I've never seen it.
Yeah.
I'm scared.
Are you a claustrophobic person?
No, I actually like small spaces.
Oh, okay. Then this is going to be for you. Yeah. Okay. Thanks as always to Sound Guy Matt.
Follow us on Instagram.
And be on the lookout for our YouTube.
Yeah.
YouTube channel? I don't know. This is how little I understand about this.
And the idea, if we can figure it out, is that we are going to post like an actual play of us playing the Thing board game.
Would be
and
a lot
being
of fun.
Suspicious of each other.
I love it, yeah.
We'll see if we can figure that out.
We will.
Coming soon. Maybe.
Question mark.
Thanks for listening.
And until next time, first goddamn week of winter.